I'm so happy to be here with you in your class today. So thank you for all the students who are attending. Appreciate it. So my name is Dr. Eileen Winokur, and I have lived in Kuwait since 1984, where I moved to marry my husband, who is Kuwaiti. We met where I grew up in Buffalo, New York, in the United States. I learned to speak Arabic so that I could communicate with family members and to learn the culture here and also the history of Kuwait. I am an educator for the last 25 years or more. I taught grade 3. I was a elementary principal, and I also taught older students English at one of the universities here, and I was the administrator of the program for a number of years. I'm retired now, and I love making these kinds of connections with students all over the world. So thank you so much for reaching out to me, Hari, and inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting my request to connect with my students. So I would like to invite one of my students to interact with you. Radhika Priya, I would like to start with you first.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Radhika.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm very well, and very nice to speak to you. And I'm wondering what your question is.
What is education like in Kuwait?
Okay, so the education in Kuwait. Education in Kuwait is made up of private schools and government or public schools. There are over 500 private schools. Majority of them actually are Indian and Pakistani schools. We have one of the largest populations of foreigners or expats in Kuwait is from India, about 500,000, 500,000 people, workers, and their families live here. I know many Indians who are actually born here because their families have lived here for so long. So this is one of the, we also have American, British, bilingual Arabic and English schools. We have an Iranian school. We have a French school, an Armenian school, because we have so many different foreigners who live and work here. Kuwait has a very small population of citizens. So this is one of the newest buildings in Kuwait. It was built about 6 or 7 years ago. It's the newest American school. They use the American curriculum. This is a picture of an older school, the schools that were built back in the 1930s and 40s. So yes, and I want to be sure that I catch all the questions, and I see lots of hands raised. So thank you, Radhika, for that question.
Thank you. Mamata, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Mamata. How are you?
I'm fine, madam. What about you?
I'm doing well now that I'm with your class. What's your question?
Thank you, ma'am. My question is, are teachers in Kuwait well paid?
It depends, really. Yes, teachers get a good salary here, but it depends on whether they work at a private school, which type of private school they work at, or whether they work at a government school, and whether they're Kuwaiti or whether they're a foreigner. There is a difference in the amount of pay, but they're all able to manage, and the salaries are quite good. They're not really, really high, but they're average.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Subramanian Srinivas.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Subramata. How are you?
I'm fine, ma'am. What about you, ma'am?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Here my question is, why is Kuwait dinar so valuable?
Oh, and that was a really interesting question that I saw Mr. Hari sent to me. The dinar is very valuable in terms of, I mean, it has a high value. because it's based on a basket, what they call a basket of currencies. So it isn't based on gold. It isn't based on one currency. It's based on the dollar, the British pound, the euro. And so because of that, the dinar is much more stable than many other countries or currencies in the world. And may I ask, what is it that interested you about that question? I mean, why are you interested in the currency? And if you want to know anything more about it.
In fact, I gave this question to this guy because we all know that in India, many people like to immigrate to Kuwait just to lead a kind of lifestyle that they don't enjoy in India. And as per my knowledge, in every part of India, they are so crazy to go to the Kuwait just to earn a lot of money, and they want to come back home, and they want to start a business, or they want to help their children's education. So that's how the Indians are so familiar with the currency of Kuwait.
Yes, that's very true. In fact, there are many Indians who live here who are able to support their families back home as a result of the fact that they're able to find jobs here. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, thank you. And if you don't mind, could you please stop sharing so that we can see you face to face? Yes.
Stop share. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Okay, now it's the Nandini's turn.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Nandini?
I'm better, ma'am.
Good.
This is Nandini, an 8th grader from P.H.S School 11. Here, my question is, what subjects are taught in Kuwait?
Okay, well, there are required subjects and there are optional subjects, probably something that you have in your school also. So the required subjects are religion, Islamic religion, and Arabic. Islamic religion for students who are Muslim. Of course, if you're not Muslim, you're not required to take it unless you choose to. English, math, science, social studies or history, depending on what grade level you are. And also some courses and of course, physical education. And many of the schools have music and they teach art. I'm trying to think of whatever other subjects. Very similar. Of course, if it's an Indian school, an Indian private school, it would actually have to follow the same protocol and curriculum as the Indian schools, because then all of the students take the tests for the national test for India in order to be able to study for university in India. So they are very strict about when they introduce it. The school year is the same here. It's from March, or it ends in March, starts again in April, goes till March, and they just take off the summertime because it's very hot here. And their families like to travel back to India.
Oh, okay. Next, Megan, over to you. Okay, Jaishnavlita.
Hello, ma'am. This is Meghna. I'm an 8th grader. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, Meghna.
What are the teaching hours in Kuwait?
Okay, that varies also depending on the school. So the government schools, and it also depends on the grade level. So the government schools, the public schools, go from about 7:30 in the morning. Kindergarten and primary go until 1:30. The upper levels, secondary, goes till about 2 p.m. The private schools start again around 7:30, and they go till, most of them go till 2:30, or some of them go until 2 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Lohita, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, ma'am. This is Lohita. I am a 9th grader. Could you allow me
Hi,
to ask?
Lohita.
Kuwait has the lowest death rate with 2.2 per 1,000 people. Could you please tell us about it?
Yes, this was a really interesting question also. They're all great questions, but this was really interesting, unusual question. So yes, we have a very low death rate because I believe we follow the World Health Organization recommendations for vaccinations, for healthcare. The way that the country is set up is that each community has its own facilities and services. So for example, each community, each suburb of Kuwait has a clinic, has a government clinic. There are also government hospitals specializing, some of them are specializing in cancer or cardiology or lungs function and so forth, maternity hospital. There are also many private hospitals for those who want to use hospitals. We've also got, for the Kuwaitis, they are insured. And for anyone who works in Kuwait or has children here in Kuwait, children, spouses, they have to, either their company has to, or they have to have health insurance. And so there is a very active use of healthcare here. It's very easy to get to. And also, I think in Kuwait in 1800s, and then again in the 1930s, Kuwait was hit with pandemics, with epidemics. And so they are of smallpox. One of those epidemics almost wiped out the whole population. And so they are very careful to screen anybody who comes into Kuwait to work for tuberculosis and AIDS and other very contagious diseases. And during COVID, they clamped down, and for about a month, we couldn't go outside except in the afternoon to walk in the neighborhoods. And they would check and make sure that we weren't going where we weren't supposed to go. So we have hardly any cases of COVID right now as a result. So that's probably why there's such a focus on healthcare here.
I think I must say that it's really a commendable job on the part of the administration and the government collective effort for keeping the death rate low all the time. It's really a great job. And I have a supplementary question in this regard. And are the people living in Kuwait are health conscious? I mean, in terms of taking food, do they take only health conscious food, or do they take the junk food or something like foreigners mostly eat?
That's a great question, Hari. It's a mix. I think the younger generation has gotten more, they're paying more attention to eating healthy and living healthy lifestyles by exercising, getting out and walking and so forth. But Kuwaiti food, for the Kuwaitis anyway, is not very healthy. A lot of meat and a lot of fat. And because of the fact that there is a lot of influence now of many restaurants and fast food, we have all of the different kinds of restaurants and fast food outlets here. So many of the younger children get used to eating out rather than eating healthy food at home. And this includes the expats, the foreigners too. But I think there is a lot more. We now have a diabetes research center, and they've been publicizing a lot about eating healthier, because diabetes and heart problems are a very high rate here. So they really try to emphasize that. In fact, we have, just really quickly, we have someone who works at our house. He's been with us for more than 22 years. And he's the person that we went to visit in Goa, actually. He's from India.
Oh.
And yes, and so he was diagnosed with diabetes several years ago, and he goes to the clinic every month. They check him, and he's been exercising and taking his medications and everything. So this is really, really important, and he's feeling much better now as a result.
Yes, in India is also one of the countries where the diabetes and the heart related issues are so prevalent, and both in northern India and southern India, I think we have the same issues. But when it comes to southern India, the diabetes patients ratio is high because of the high consumption of the rice. In southern India, they consume a lot of rice. So that's why the ratio of the diabetes is much more high compared to the northern part, where the people, they're health conscious, they take the rotis instead of taking the rice. Rotis means it's made up of wheat.
Yes, we also do. And because a lot of our traditions are connected to India. So we eat rice every single day. Kuwaitis do anyway. And yes. We don't personally eat the spicy food, but you know, many people really like the spicy food. So yes, it's delicious, but yes,
at the same time, it's not good for health.
No, it's not good for the health. Yes.
Okay, Harina, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hi, ma'am. My name is Farina. I'm an 8th grade student. I am from P.H.S. Ayalavaram. Here, my question is, why is learning English is important in Kuwait?
Very good question. Yes, because especially since I taught English, learning English is really important because it's such a universal language. It's unfortunate that the way they teach it in the public schools isn't as useful to the students as it should be. It's very much rote memory, and they don't introduce the grammar until later on. And they don't introduce writing. They don't do much with writing either, and their reading comprehension is a bit weak. Also, Arabic to English are extremely different languages. And so the concept of how to even structure like an essay when they're writing is completely different, because Arabic is a very poetic, flowery language. And so you could have a whole paragraph with one full stop, with one period. Whereas, you know, in English, you have to keep your sentences a bit shorter. And so our students who are going from Arabic to English find it very difficult. But we have a lot of international trade and banking, financial business and things like that. So it's very important for students to learn English to be able to be bilingual when they're in their jobs later on. And we have many American universities here that teach in English, private universities. Okay. Good question.
So I also heard that many foreigners, especially the Americans, are living in many parts of Kuwait because as per the government policy, in order to make the civilians of Kuwait to be exposed to the English language so that they can make their business so easy. Is it the policy of the government to invite the foreigners, especially the native English speakers, to settle in Kuwait?
Well, it's a very open place. It's since COVID, it has gotten more difficult to get work visas. However, we have a lot of foreigners here. The population of Kuwait is about 4.4 million. That's a total population. Kuwaitis of that are only about 1/3. So we have about 800,000 Egyptians, 500,000 Indians, several 100,000 Filipinos, and Americans and British are smaller populations, but still in the tens of thousands. So yes, we have many people who speak English. It's interesting too, when you encounter people who don't speak Arabic. Many times they're from different places and the common language is English for them.
Yes. So I must say that those who are used to the conditions of American weather, and in Kuwait weather, it's quite different. It's very hot and humid. So how do the Americans adopt to these harsh conditions of the desert?
Yes. Well, yeah, if they're not from Arizona or some desert place in the United States, it's very, very hot here for them in the summertime. And with climate change, it's gotten even hotter. Everything is air conditioned. But of course, if you go outside, it's you know, it's after being in the air conditioning, it's quite a difference.
Yes.
Many of them try to take their vacations in the summertime. If they can get, you know, at least 1 month off, because the vacations are quite generous here, more than in the United States, which is usually just a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And yeah, and they just stay indoors most of the time during the day in order to avoid having to, leave early in the morning. So if they're going to do their exercise or anything like that, they wake up very early in the morning or late in the evening. Yeah.
So how does the government of Kuwait cope up with the electricity challenge? That means in order to generate a lot of electricity and to meet the heavy consumption of electricity, because you are using the high use of air conditions almost every minute. So how does the government of Kuwait cope up with this challenge of producing a large number of electricity throughout 24 hours?
Yes, that's a great question. So we have power stations. They're in the process of building an additional one because during the summer, there are times when in order to accommodate the use of electricity, which is very, very high, especially in June, July, and August, they have to do short periods of outages for a couple of hours. So what they do is they will let the neighborhood know that there isn't going to be electricity for 3 or 4 hours. It doesn't happen often, but if the usage gets to be too much, it's sort of a warning to everybody that they need to be more mindful about how they're using it and when they're using it. Because if they're, you know, it's really hard to do without the air conditioning, but you can check and see if you're keeping your lights on or if you're using it in other ways that you don't need to. So to be more mindful about how you're using electricity, they're trying to increase that mindfulness.
Okay, but what about the electricity bills? So do you need to shell out a lot of money from your pockets in the name of electricity bills, or the bills are the minimum as per the subsidized by the government?
Well, they were more subsidized up until about a year and a half ago. And we all got used to that being pretty cheap. And then the government said, you know, that's probably not a good idea. And so I'm trying to remember the percentage they raised it by, which was quite a bit. And so I know that especially anyone who owns buildings or offices and so forth, that it has doubled or tripled. But it's still fairly reasonable. But I know that sometimes people have to sort of schedule their payments, so they're not able to pay it all the time. And of course, those who are renting, they look to be sure that the electricity is included in the rent if possible, so they don't have to be charged for that. So then the owner of the building has to pay for it.
Okay, Jaishnavi, it's over to you. Jaishnavi, do you have any question? Yes, please.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Jaishnavi.
How are you, ma'am?
Turn on your
doing
camera.
well.
Turn on your camera, please.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'd like to see you if it's possible. There you are.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, go ahead with your question.
Yes, ma'am. What is life like in Kuwait?
What is life like in Kuwait? Okay. Well, it's hot in the summer, as Mr. Hari has told you. We have a fairly regular schedule. So people go to work. We have way too much traffic. No matter how many streets and highways they build, we have way too many cars on the road. And so there's always a lot of traffic lately. We have a downtown area where the banks and the stock market is. We have an old souk or market there. And, you know, everybody gets up and goes to work. Most families, the husband and wife both work. The children go to school, except in the summer. In the summertime, many people leave because it's just so hot and they travel to cooler places. Is there anything specific about what you would like to know about life in Kuwait? We eat many Indian foods. We love biryani, and we eat rice every day. Before our independence in 1962, actually, I don't know if your students know, we used the rupee. We instead of the dinar, we used the rupee. And so if you talk to people who lived in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, they will talk about rupiah, because that's how they paid, by rupees.
Yes.
We didn't have a common party. Go ahead.
Here my question is, what schools are popular in Kuwait, public or private?
It depends, really. We have hundreds of thousands of students. I think there are 800,000 students or more in the public schools. And as I said, we have over 500 schools. I think it's not a matter of popularity. It's a matter of where the students will go to university afterwards. So if they're thinking about going to university outside of Kuwait, they might study at a British or American or bilingual school. Whereas if they're here with their family from India, they will probably go to an Indian school, because then they have to be able to take this, I think it's the CBSE exams, and
Yes,
be
yes,
able
exactly.
to pass. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And be able to pass them in order to go to university back in India. So yeah, it really depends. There isn't more popular or less popular. It's more depends on what they need to do in the future.
Yeah, I understood. So Gagan, it's your last question. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Gagan Saitya. I am a 7th grader. I would like to ask a question, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
What is the best thing about Kuwait?
What's the best thing about Kuwait? Well, there are lots of really good things about Kuwait. I love the history of Kuwait. But the best thing about Kuwait is the food. And you know why? Because there's so much of the spices that we use from India. I came from America and we eat burgers and steak and potatoes. And then I came here and it's rice and marag and biryani and curry. And it was like, I'm not going back to the United States to live. I'm staying here for the food.
Yes. Last 2022, I have been to United States of America. I stayed there for 45 days. So during these 45 days, I had to cook my own food. But the worst thing was I had to contend with some fruits in the morning, and in the evening, I had to cook my meal. And I desperately missed my Indian meal. So people like me and any Indian, if they visit any foreign country, they definitely miss the Indian food, because we are not the people. The pizza burgers are not our cup of teas, in fact. So we are going to suffer a lot if we don't get the Indian food.
Yes, especially in Andhra Pradesh, because your food is very distinct.
Yes.
And the spices are very, you know, specific. Yes. So if you eat something, you're going to say, this tastes like nothing.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. And before we end this session, could you please give a final message to my students?
I just want to say this was a wonderful meeting, and I look forward to further meetings. If you ever want me back about anything specific, please let me know if you have any other questions. I'll send you the link to the Wakelet collection just so you have the information and the pictures. And good luck with all of your studies. You're doing a great job, and I really enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and we were so